What's up, my guys? What's up, my girls? Welcome back to the Dani Flo Podcast. I'm your boy, Dani Flo. I'm a 28-year-old Catholic husband and father. This is my podcast where I share my philosophy of life with you. I don't try to answer the question, what is life? What I do is I share what brings meaning and purpose and value in my life, what makes it significant, and what I think could make it significant for you too. I'm joined today by a friend that I met on Instagram. One of the good things on Instagram is that you can meet like-minded people. I'm wearing one of his beanies. Um, Maybe he'll share a little bit about that in a second. His name is Sergio, and I invited him on here today because he recently posted on his Instagram that he thinks we need a new conservative party because the current one, the one that conservatives usually vote for, the Republican Party, aka the GOP, the Grand Old Party, isn't doing what he thinks is best, and I want to give him a chance to explain that at length. And so he's on here because faith is important to me, and politics is also important to me. So Sergio, welcome. Thank you for being here, and just tell me about yourself. What would you like me to know?
Well, I pretty much started my social media. Oh, I'm sorry. My first Sergio. Name is Sergio. I live in Southern California, specifically in the Santa Clarita area. I'm what people call the revert. I don't consider myself a revert, even though I was baptized Catholic. I never put any type of practice into my faith. Never did. So I had a conversion about in 2012, 2013. I had a conversion, which I've talked about before in other podcasts before. And from there, about a year later, I started a Catholic clothing brand by the name of JMJCat3. And I see you're wearing one of my original beanies. And this is the hat I have on is one of my later models. As of now, I suspended JMJCat3 for a little while. I was just taking a break from it. I'm pretty busy in my career, which I don't really want to talk about because we're gonna touch on subjects that are go against what I do. So just
Okay, so in 2012, you had the what you're describing as a reversion to the faith. You were you raised Catholic?
I was raised Catholic. My mom tried to raise me until eventually, she gave up. But I'm sure her prayers kept counting.
Of course.
Yeah, in 2013, we had a situation where my brother-in-law ended up getting leukemia, and in that they invited me to pray a novena, and I was agnostic maybe at best, leaning towards atheist, didn't care about anything. And they asked me to pray a novena, and I didn't. I started listening to a Spanish radio station, and they were asking for money, and I was like, dude, I can't be listening to this junk. And I forced myself because I love my brother-in-law, and I'm gonna do it for him, even if I had to listen to it. In those 9 days, I had a change of thought, spirituality, everything. On that 9th day, I prayed a rosary. Well, I listened to a rosary, fully understood what the Catholic faith was.
That's
at
wild.
its basic principle. And then from there, my wife, I'm sure my wife always prayed for me too, because she always practiced her faith. And from there, my wife told me about a men's group, because the way I saw the Catholic faith was about, little old ladies, little viejitas praying the rosary. And, and for me, I'm always, attracted to the manly stuff. That's what I like, And she told me, what, there's a group of guys that pray the rosary together. And there's this guy named Johnny Romero at this group, and you're going to like him. And so I ended up going, I ended up going to this men's ministry, the Brotherhood of St. Dismas. And I eventually ended up going. And when the first day I went, I saw like 20 men on their knees praying. I mean, it's like a military when you just see only men praying a rosary like that on their knees, you know, with their hands extended, just closed eyes, everything. It's like military, man. And for me, I was like, dude, this is like a manly rosary here, you know. I love this. I never left the group. Jesse Romero was actually part of that group too. So I got to hear him speak. So he was actually part of our brotherhood. I used to see him there every Monday. It's like he's there praying with us every Monday. So listening to him talk, and of course, not only him, a lot of those guys in my group as well, just theologians in that group and just faithful guys in there. My brother Joe Reina, he was like the what they call the hermano mayor. He's one of the guys that's in charge of the group. And eventually there's a 2-year period where you got to transition into the faith and you become a professed hermano, professed brother. And, you know, eventually after a year and a half, 2 years, I became professed. And I've been in that brotherhood since then, since 2013, which has been very important to my faith, you know. So I got a lot of guys that influenced me in the faith. I got to learn my faith because of those guys. That was very important. So
that's very interesting. Do you think that experience of praying that novena for, was it your brother-in-law you said?
My brother-in-law, yeah.
Yeah, you said on the 9th day, that's when you had a complete change of mind and heart, and you said, I had a different spirituality on day 9. Do you think that's why, and that in combination with the brotherhood that you were introduced to, do you think that that's why you started your Catholic clothing company as fast as you did? Because it sounds like you did it within, what, a year and a half?
A year. Well, it did, but my background, see, I was a full-blown liberal, full-blown Democrat. Yeah, not, okay, this is the full, yeah. So I totally converted everything. So I'm gonna go further back a little bit. So what happened was that in my background, when I started working at age 18, 19, 20, I always worked with kids, right? I worked with kids in low-income neighborhoods. You know, so I got to see that. I worked with the juveniles. And then later on in my life, I ended up working in with the prison system, juvenile prison system. I ended up working in the juvenile prison system. So also helping out young men, young people, young boys to get them out of there. So my mentality is always to help the youth, you know? So when I started JMJCat3, I had that in mind. I was like, you know what? We got to bring young men into the faith. So a lot of the apparel that I started developing was urban Catholic apparel. I also affiliated myself with a lot of the Catholic hip hop guys in the beginning. So I did a lot of urban apparel, a lot of apparel that young men would have liked or would like. And a lot of the Catholic people started seeing these like, hey, you know what? Don't just do Catholic urban apparel, do some stuff for us too. So it ended up just generalizing for everybody because people liked, you know, the hats and stuff like that. So
I don't want to get all sappy, but when I discovered my faith, I was also raised Catholic, but just like you, I never paid attention, you know. In 2014, when I had I wouldn't call it a reversion. I would call it a conversion, because I did not know anything about the faith, even though I knew very little things. And but I converted in 2014, like the last half. And at the time, I was 22. I was 22, and like I remember when I first converted, I was like really excited, you know, and I had the same mentality as you, like the faith is just for like viejitas, you know, like that they don't have anything else to do, so they come here and they pray their like rosaries. But you know, I got stuff to do because like I'm young, and you know what I mean, like I'm not gonna like waste my time doing that. Like I mean, I was excited because my conversion was kind of slow, because it was more like in my head, you know what I mean? Like to me, like the truth was like slowly pulling like my mind. And I've always been like an in my head guy. And so I was like super excited about that. But yeah, like I was kind of like, where are the young people? Bro, when I found JMJCat, I was like, this is what I was talking about. And like I told you in a DM, like I used to wear a lot of fitted hats, but it wasn't because I like baseball. Like I don't know anything about baseball. I don't know anything about sports because I didn't grow up with a dad. My mom was married, but he wasn't really into sports either. Like he like worked, and like the kind of sports that he liked was like Mexican sports. Like, do you know what coleaderos are?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like he liked that stuff, and I wasn't really into that. So I just wore fitted hats because I thought they were cool. And then I found JMJCat, and it had the Ave Maria on there. It had the Jesus. It had the IHS, and I was like, man, this is. And I bought it, and then every single time like my birthday came up or something like that, my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, that's what she would get me because she knew that that's what I wanted. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And it has started some like interesting conversations. Like some people be like, "Oh, you like the Yankees?" And I'm like, nah, bro, this is Mary, bro. This is Ave Maria. And they're like, oh, and then, so it worked for me, man. So, God bless you. Tell me a little bit about that though. Why do you think, so you used to work with the youth before you had your conversion and you started a JMJCat3. Why do you think that before your conversion, you were what you described a full-blown liberal, a Democrat? What do you think it
So,
was that gravitated you to those ideologies?
so I'm gonna go back to when I was about between 18 and about 30 years old. No, maybe about 27, 28 years old. I worked with after school programs. I worked with youth in poor neighborhoods. So that was my background. And then I ended up leaving that. And then I ended up actually getting a job working for LA County. I'll say that because I'm not working with them anymore. But I started working for the welfare department, right? At this point, I'm still a full-blown liberal, registered Democrat, everything. And I was responsible. My job was to, do food stamps. My job was to do Medi-Cal, and what else? Programs like CalWorks and whatever. And that I was doing that in the San Fernando Valley. So I started going through some things, and I just started looking at some things that were like going on right there. So one thing that was like that I started paying attention to was like, okay, I was having people, that were illegal. Not that I have anything against them, but you see the unfairness of this, where they're illegal, and they would have like several kids, and then I would dish out, at the time it was about maybe 2004, 2005, $500-600 in food stamps. The lady wouldn't qualify, but all her kids would, and it was very minimal proof of who they were. I wouldn't have to ask them for all these documentations because that's all I needed. A birth certificate for the kids. Okay, here they sign up, $400 or $500 for all the kids, which is fine. People need to eat when they're poor, of course. But what got me about that was that at the time, a gentleman that was an Iraq War veteran came and applied for food stamps. I had to tell him he didn't qualify. He had 3 kids because he had some type of liquid asset that he didn't really have access to at the moment. Maybe about 30 days. He could ask for his money, but it took about 30 days. And I was like, you know what? This is wrong. Like, an Iraq War veteran is here asking for food stamps, and he doesn't qualify. And yet I have a person who is illegal here, and that same day they could walk out with their little EBT cards and go get something at the store. How fair is that? You have a person that went to go fight for our country, okay, and doesn't qualify. I started seeing those types of things, that started making my little, thing going, my little brain going. It's like, this is wrong, Another thing I started noticing was like, oh, this is what one of the other things that got me too. I had an 11-year-old little girl come and apply for Medi-Cal for an abortion. She didn't know who the dad was. She knew the dad was some guy named Creeper, okay? And at the time, they had passed the law stating that the minor does not need permission or does not need to inform the parent of the abortion that they would get.
Sorry to interrupt. This was in 2005?
2005.
So in 2005, California already had a law that a minor, not even it, I mean,
Yeah.
that 11 years old did not need to inform her parents that she didn't have to have a parent to have access to an abortion.
Yeah.
That's 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, this child, 11, 12-year-old, and I mean, I gave it to her. At the time, I didn't care about this stuff, about abortion, I mean, but at the same time, it's like, dude, you're 11, 12 years old. Like, where are your parents? Mm-hmm. That makes you start thinking like, you know what I'm doing is wrong, I did that. So it's the little things started happening. And then I started noticing that they're pushing us to hand out as much food stamps, all these things, trying to push all this money to leave the welfare office there. That way, they get more funding for next year. It's like, wait a minute, things are not supposed to be like that. People are supposed to come in because they need money, they need food, but in order for you to push out as much as you can so that way you have a bigger budget next year, how are we helping our own people there? In an office like this, who goes to those offices? The minorities, Black, brown, Armenian, and that job got so stressful that I don't think I lasted 2 years there, and I kept seeing those things happen over and over again, people that were driving up to the welfare office, and my desk was by the window. It's like they had some same people I was helping out that had some nice cars coming up to the welfare office and getting food stamps and stuff like that. I'm like, things weren't making sense. I left that job. So that job, thanks to that job, it started my process of becoming a conservative politically. 2008 rolled around. I voted for Obama. I was still in that.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting because, like I was telling you, my conversion to the faith was, I mean, now that I'm hearing you talk, I take it back. This has been like a long process. Like it probably felt fast when the novena happened. But we're talking about you converted 2012, 2013 already, like almost 10 years before. You were already starting to move, to a conservative ideology, and the conservative ideology is a lot of times correlated with, religious conservatism. So you were already, on your way there. But I think it's interesting what you just said, because you started noticing all these inconsistencies. I had to have minimal information for an illegal immigrant to give food stamps for her and her 3 kids, but something that seems kind of insignificant disqualifies a veteran that risked his life for his country, and he can't feed his 3 kids. And some of these people that were helping out, they seem to be well off in the car department, so why are we giving them money for to help them when we could be helping someone that's really struggling? And the intention was to help people, but that's not what they were talking about. They were saying we need to get rid of the money that we have so that we have an even bigger budget next year. You noticed all that, and that started to get the wheels spinning, but still 3 years later, like, you still voted for Obama. So I mean, do you think it's fair to say that it takes a while to kind of maybe fully wake up, or fully like I guess completely change ideologies, politically or otherwise?
I think you get thrown little tidbits here and there, and you eventually you start catching these things. One other thing I forgot to mention was that I would have these girls come in. They were very pregnant. I'm talking about 8, almost 9 months pregnant. They were U.S. citizens, but they didn't know English at all whatsoever. And they would get their Medi-Cal to have their baby here. Of course, you know, if somebody's pregnant at 8 months and they're coming to apply for Medi-Cal for their pregnancy, obviously they're not living here in the U.S. You know, they don't know anything, no English whatsoever, have nothing, no background, no work, nothing. You know they're coming from other countries to have their baby here and then go back with it. That started happening a lot too, and that's what I started noticing. But as far as you know, what do you call it? Yeah, you start getting little tidbits here and there that eventually you're gonna become a conservative, you know, and if you get a good career and you start making a little bit of money, then you start thinking financially conservative as well. It's like, dude, I don't want to pay 50-60%, you know, taxes, you know, and you know, so when guys like Bernie Sanders come up and like, dude, I'm already financially tight. You know, I don't need somebody like Bernie Sanders or AOC coming into the politics and say, hey, this is how much more you have to pay, you know? I mean, it's crazy. Coming from a single income dad, you know, now I'm thinking about this guy Biden now trying to raise taxes now. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to adjust myself here now, you know? So eventually, becoming conservative, being a full-blown liberal to becoming conservative, you know, and then getting into my faith, you know, I would be considered a like extreme right-wing extremist, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody wanted to put you in a box or label you or stereotype you or draw a straw man or a caricature without, you know, listening, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, and so I'm willing to hear you out. But I think a lot of times people, they find out, well, Sergio's Catholic, you know, they hate women and they're extremists, and they don't know anything about you. You know, they don't know anything about you. They don't take into account your experiences. They don't take into account your past. That I didn't know that you were a liberal. I didn't know that you were a Democrat. I didn't know that you had experience, and I had to, you know, talk to you to find that out, you know. And yeah, I think people would probably consider you and me, I guess, some sort of extremist or some sort of right-wing nut person. But not everybody. So there's, you know, so there's hope, and then, you know, our hope is in the Lord. So I mean, we're in the political area. So what I want to do is I want to start with the beginning, right? I want to start with the current situation. So in your you know, the best way that you can, you know, we're not political pundits, we're not experts, but in the best way that you can, why are you unhappy with the GOP, with the current Republican Party?
Well, the current Republican Party, you know, I became Republican about 2 years ago. I've been, you know, I went from Democrat to independent. So I became a conservative while I was, you know, when I became conservative, you know, I placed my independent. So I became an independent, and because of the area that I moved, I was like, you know what, I had to, I want more say. I want to be able to vote for my local Republicans here. So, you know, I changed my ticket to Republican. But I've noticed that it's, you know, it's just been difficult to support the Republicans when they haven't really backed up their president, especially when it comes to the abortion issue. You know, Trump's been, you know, he's not super pro-life. You know, he has his exceptions, but he's been reducing the funding for a lot of these organizations. You know, and for me, that's a big plus. You know, nobody's really stepped up to help him out. You know, a lot of the Republicans have kind of just turned his back on him, and they just want to move on. You know, like McConnell the other day, he said, you know what, just accept it and let's just move on. I'm like, how are we going to move on if there's still a fight? With all this fraud going on that happens, you know, everything, the media, the Democrats, they're just brushing it aside, and they're just saying, hey, you know what, all those Trumpsters and Trump, he's crazy, you know. And a lot of what they call the rhinos, they just pretty much they're pretty much just want to move on from there. You know, I think they're scared. They're politically motivated, and they're scared of a fight. You know, simply as that. So for me, if they don't stick up for our president, January 6th, you know, and nothing happens, and Trump doesn't get in, then I think it might be time for myself. I'm possibly going to go back to independent, and the Republicans are going to lose a lot of people, you know. But you know, there's a movement out there of people that want to start a new party. You're hearing a lot of the chatter on social media about a patriot party, you know. So it might be time, you know. So if Trump doesn't get in, then the Republicans are going to lose a lot of people. You know.
Do you think that some people think that it's not the Republican senators and House of Representatives and politicians that should be supporting Trump, but that it's Trump that should be supporting, you know, these Republican politicians? You know, do you think some people are like, well, you know, there might be some evidence of fraud, but the courts keep for some reason dismissing them. Maybe there's evidence but not enough evidence, so maybe Trump should just put his support behind some of the Republican politicians so that the Republican politicians can still do some good.
You know, a lot of the Republicans got in because of Trump. You know, you know, he's put up a fight. Just look at Georgia. You know, he's already gone out there. He already went out to Georgia. He held a rally. You know, and he might do another one the next couple weeks, week or two, I heard. And how many times has he done this though? How many times has he gone to a state, you know, and they've turned their backs on him, you know, like this Kemp guy from Georgia, you know. You know, and that's not, that doesn't show unity. You know, it shows weakness. And you know, it might be time to move on from the Republicans, and then just find a new conservative party, somebody that, you know, where we could hold our Christian values, that will hold our Christian values as well, you know.
Okay, so do you think it's fair if I describe these concerns as the first concern is that from your perspective, Trump has been more pro-life than the current Republicans in office. He's not perfect, right? He has some exceptions for you know, the common ones, rape and incest, but
Yeah.
he has taken a lot of money away from Planned Parenthood, who we can describe as big abortion, and the Republicans haven't really backed him on that. And then now that Trump seems to be trying to fight voter fraud in these, you know, swing states, that they're not backing him when some of these guys, some of these senators or House of Representatives, you know, Trump backed them in order for them to get into office. And so they just kind of want to move on. While he was in office, they haven't really been supporting him on the abortion. And now that Joe Biden is the projected winner, they're kind of just like, okay, you lost, move on. And so those seem to be like your two major concerns.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's tough. So, okay. So there's talk about a Patriot Party, which would be a new place for conservatives, you know, like yourself, and conservatives that have these same concerns. So how could this new Patriot Party or this new conservative party, you know, what would it do different than the GOP? What would you like to see different?
Well, people are just concerned with a lot of the the old timers that are still in these parties. And I'm talking about the Democrats as well, the Nancy Pelosi's, the McConnells. Those people have a lot of influence, people like Pelosi in her part of the state, she don't even really have to, go out and, ask for votes and stuff, because, people are just going to automatically vote her in, And when people are in office that long, it just opens up, they get comfortable, and then we'll have situations where, it opens the door for them to start committing fraud and stuff, because, they know the ins and outs, and they know how to get in there, and that just, that's what we're seeing now, They have a lot of connections, and a lot of dirty play happens, they should have limited terms, I mean, it just keeps that, people in there, just fresh, people coming in and out, and instead of being in office 30, 40 years, it's just, people need to move, and young people need to start getting in there and running for office, and that's what kind of makes it kind of difficult, especially, like we see these people, they're trying to pass a budget, but it doesn't go nowhere because, Pelosi's holding it hostage. How's that fair for the people,
Could I interrupt you there? Is that also another concern of yours, and another concern that you're seeing among conservatives that that Pelosi is holding up, the stimulus package or the stimulus bill, and what are the Republicans doing? Like, why are they letting her? It's like you were saying, all of these people know each other, right? They've all been in office for years. They all know the system. They all have connections. So how is it fair, or how is it that Nancy Pelosi has so much power to be able to single-handedly hold this bill up? You would think that there'd be something that the Republicans could do, or have you seen any effort from them to just try and work around her, or to get this bill approved or stimulus package approved?
It's just kind of difficult. I'm sure they're putting in their effort, but for one person to just hold it up, and she's admitted she admitted herself that, she pretty much held this, a couple months ago, she had held this bill hostage because, she had something against Trump. How's it that one person has that much power? It's just that's just hard to comprehend. You're letting a bunch of businesses, close permanently because you're holding up a stimulus bill. That's just too much. That's just too much, too comfortable. She's just comfortable being in control of people. That's all it is. Like I said, and nobody's gonna tell her anything because for some way or some reason they're scared of her. Politically scared of her.
Okay, so in this new conservative patriot party, one of the things that would be different than the GOP and all of these career, Democrat and Republican politicians is the new party, and the people that would want to be part of it, they would be for term limits.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I would agree that.
So that's one thing that is different, and the reason for that is because what we seem to be observing is that there's people like Nancy Pelosi and maybe Mitch McConnell, right? They've been in politics so long that they've learned the system, good for them, but now they're exploiting the system.
Yep.
Right, because they've been able to learn it so well. And so we kind of need people coming in and out, maybe just to not give them that opportunity to, like, okay, learn the system to an extent, but get out before you exploit it. Does that seem kind of fair?
Of course.
Okay, so term limits. What else would you like to see from a new conservative party, if a new conservative party is available or is created?
Well, of course, upholding our Christian values, of course, pro Second Amendment.
Mhm.
You know, that's a big one. Of course, our religion. You know, it's just kind of difficult to say. A lot of the things that the Republican Party holds dear, you know, I think the Patriot Party would.
Mhm.
You know, you know, even if it would just to shake up the Republican Party a bit, you know, to say, hey, you know what, we need to start working because we're losing a lot of people. You know, that would
Mhm.
scare them. You know, that's just maybe something I would like to say. Something like, you know, when the Tea Party got started, you know, several years ago, I think that shook the party up a little bit, right?
Mhm.
You know, maybe something similar now. Because obviously the GOP and the Democrats, that's just the powerhouse. You know, they're going to have all the funding. So a new party like the Patriot Party would have to start from ground zero, you know. But the concern here is, you know, if they don't take care of this 2020 election, if they don't take care of the fraud this time around, I don't think there will be any other chances for another party to even start. You know, if they allowed all this fraud to happen, you know, even if you did bring up a new party, well, what's that new party going to do against the fraud that's allowed? You know, so that would be kind of difficult. You know, so whatever's happening now in the elections needs to happen like now. You know, that's why I'm hoping that Trump gets in, then he would take care of this fraud. You know, hopefully the people, the Democrats and the Republicans work together and say, hey, you know what, we need to establish these new rules at locally each state, because obviously the federal government can't tell the states how to run elections. Each state runs their elections,
Mhm.
you know, whatever, you know, however they run it, but I'm sure there's federal guidelines as to how they have to do it, right? But then the state has its own way of doing it too. So all these people got to start working together. That way we have legitimate elections every 2 years, you know,
Mhm.
and clean elections. Because obviously with these mail-in ballots and all this system with the Dominion system, all these things are finding out, you know, if it's bad now, 2024, it's going to be much worse.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's maybe take a break from from what's going on with the president and the fight against fraud that he's fighting, and maybe not talk about a conservative party like at the national level. Like, you're from California, right?
Right.
And you've been there. How long have you been in California?
My whole life.
Your whole life. Is it fair to say you're unhappy with the political leadership in California as well?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So do you think it's possible for like the state, like the state of California, or I'm over here in the Midwest, you know, the state of Illinois, the state of Wisconsin, do you think that it's possible for a party to emerge at the state level?
California, a conservative party would be very difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in deep blue. This is California's a deep blue state,
Mhm.
man. You know, it would be very difficult over here. You know, I live in one of the most conservative areas of California.
Mhm.
But everywhere else you go, man, I mean, you drive 20 minutes from here, man, you're in Bernie bro land, you know. You know, so it would be very difficult here in California, but I'm
Mhm.
sure it's possible,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, do you think it would be possible, and if anybody finds this video, they might be familiar with all of the, I guess, for lack of better terminology, the bad press that the governor of Florida gets for not locking down Florida. I think he locked it down once, and he came out and said that was a mistake. We're not locking down anymore. Um, that might be off. He might have done it once or twice, but he came out and said that's a mistake. We're not doing it anymore. And of course, people don't like that he's not locking it down, that he's not issuing stay-at-home orders. Do you think a new conservative party would be able to form in a place like that, where they have some political power at you know, at the state level, because Governor DeSantis is Republican?
Right. I mean, I don't think it has much to do with being a Republican or a Democrat when it comes down to that. I think it's more of common sense. You know, I mean, we have, you know, the state of California is pretty much strict lockdown. You got Florida, which is the total opposite. You know, I mean, there is a pandemic. You know, there is, you know, that exists. Now, it is the job of the government or the, you know, the medical experts to say, hey, these are the guidelines. This is what we're going through. You know, we might need to, you know, limit access to restaurants or something, you know, like, so there won't be too many people cluttered up in one area. You know, give that responsibility back to the people, you know. I mean, we're all grown adults here, you know. You know, I don't, like I said, I'm not from that extreme side that says, hey, this pandemic is a scamdemic. It's not. It does exist, but obviously it's been politicized a lot. But like I said, it's just too much of an extreme where these people are losing their livelihood. These small businesses, they're losing their livelihood because they can't open their restaurants. You know, and that's the majority of our economy here, you know. Yeah,
that's a good point. Before I lose it, before we talk about people, you know, one of the, I think maybe one of the other concerns is probably that we would like to see more, you know, I mean, I haven't really seen it. I don't know about you, and I don't know about anybody else, but it kind of just seems like very few, you know, Republican politicians are talking about that, you know, or trying to do something practical about that. Like, people are losing their businesses, people are losing their livelihood. Like, do you think that's one of the things that is causing this unhappiness with the GOP, that we want like a new conservative party that's actually gonna, you know, fight? And when these abuses are happening, when you know, to us, it seems like the Democrats are the ones that want to lock everything down. So when they're trying to lock everything down, it would at least be refreshing to see you know, conservative politicians like go toe to toe with them with like everything they got. Like, no, you need to stop trying to lock these people down because they're going to lose their business and livelihood.
Yeah, definitely. That's what we have been seeing, you know. It's just the Republicans haven't really been saying much. They're not known for, you know, putting up a fight. And like I said, it goes back to the career politicians that, you know, they're comfortable being elected year after year, pretty much do whatever they want, you know. And then you got these young people coming in, and, you know, these young politicians coming in, they don't say anything because, you know, you have this one person that's up on the pedestal because they've been in office for so long. So it's just kind of like the presidency, you know. I mean, people I wouldn't want to see a President Trump for 20 years, you know. And I'm a conservative, you know what I'm saying? You just got to keep that door revolving, you know. Just new blood, you know. It's like Venezuela, you know. Like this president, he just keeps getting elected. I'm like, no, you gotta kick him out and bring in new ideas, you know. Like I said, I'm not one of those full-blown right-wing extremists where, like, you know, there needs to be a balance politically. You know, obviously there's some things that we're not going to negotiate, like abortion and all those things, you know. But there needs to be a balance, because if one party is in power too long, then you're going to have what we have here in California, you know. So there needs to be a balance. Any normal person would see that, you know. if the Republican Party would be in power, 50 years, and they would start abusing things. I mean, just it goes back to the same thing like in Mexico. How long was the PRI party? How long were they in power? 71 years. And you know how corrupt they got. And they started having other parties, but it's just it opens the door for corruption. When a party is in power too long, and when you have these politicians
So I mean, if it's fair, it seems that like you're concerned at like two levels, right? So we have two parties, Democrats and Republicans, right? And liberals tend to vote Democrat and conservatives tend to vote Republican. So one concern is that sometimes one of those parties is in power so long at the state level or at the national level that it starts to like erode and become corrupt. Right. So that's like at a bigger level, but at a smaller level, like within the Democrat Party and within the Republican Party, you have career politicians, right? And maybe they share the same, ideology or values as the people that they represent. Maybe the Democrats share the same values as their voters, their liberal voters, and Republicans share the same values as their conservative voters. But because they're career politicians and they've been in office so long, then they start to erode and they start to get corrupt because, like you said, they learn the ins and outs, they have political power, they got connections, and so now they've got influence. And then so now it's not about Sergio. Like I want to, Sergio voted me in, so I want to do what's best for him because then he's not going to vote me in a second time. It's, I don't need Sergio. You know what I mean? Like I don't need Dani. Like I know that I'm going to get reelected and I got connections and this and that. So like you said, they're comfortable. So they don't have to worry about the vote because they're a career politician. So they're not going to fight.
Right.
Do you think that's kind of?
Yeah, that's what happens. That's what happens. They get comfortable where they're at. They know they're going to have money coming in. They know that people are going to vote for them regardless, just because it either has a D or an R on it. In my situation, it's California, so everybody pretty much just votes down the line Democrat. So when these measures come in, for example, was it 2018? When our governor got elected, and then also we had that one measure for the gas tax, and they said, hey, you know what? It's only going to be 12 cents. So they pretty much voted for what the Democrats wanted, and people voted for this gas tax that was supposed to be 12 cents. Immediately when it went into effect, our gas went up like 50, 60 cents, and people just vote down the line, just straight D. I mean, like, it's just kind of, people don't think about who they're voting for.
Yeah. So you said something earlier because you were like, I don't know what the new conservative party would look like. We're trying to work it out in real time. We're trying to wrestle with this, and you said there's talks about calling it the Patriot Party, but you were like earlier today, you were like, it's not about Democrat or about Republican, it's about common sense. Maybe it should be called the Common Sense Party, is what it should be called. But I do have a question about this summer because we talked about the pandemic, right? It's real, right? But on top of the pandemic, right, and on top of the pandemic being politicized, right, and on top of small business owners like losing their business and losing their like influence, right? On top of all of that, during the summer, like a lot of the churches were getting their statues torn down and vandalized and just awful things. And the reason I bring that up is one of the things that you said earlier is the new conservative party would still kind of share some of the things that the current Republican Party, has, like, they would try to uphold Christian values, right? But I think another area where we, I guess, maybe are kind of unhappy is, like, where were these Republican politicians when the statues were getting torn down? Like,
Right.
like that's property, right? Like, the government is supposed to protect people's property, right? Whether they're a religious institution or not, and I think it goes back to what you said, that for some reason they don't want to fight. They're not used to fighting. But I do remember that you were doing, for people that don't know, during the summer, you were doing your best to, go to churches around your area and protect, the church's property. So, talk a little bit about that.
Well, pretty much, it's just, I think it was one incident in particular where we have maybe about 20-25 minute drive. I have I grew up in the the city of San Fernando, and we have the, San Fernando mission there, one of the original 22 missions. And I started noticing on video that they're trying to, tear down the Father Junipero Serra statue, and they had painted red on it. And actually, no, I'm sorry, I apologize. My wife told me that they called her, that they're trying to tear it down, and she was like, she just couldn't believe it. So I was like, I'm gonna just go, and by that time I got in my car and I left. It's like, we got to fight for what we believe, and if they're going to go on basic private grounds or church grounds and start tearing, our statues, what's that say about us? If we're not willing to defend our faith, then what's that say about us? By the time I got there, most of those people had left. The people that were trying to tear these statues down. But before that, there was some I want to say cristeros, people, the local guys that live locally went out there and they stopped them from doing that. And there was already a person there taking off the paint from the statue, the desecration on it. If it wasn't for those people, they probably would have knocked down that, that's the statue, Sure, it's only brick, it's only metal, but you know what? That represents our faith, and we got to fight for our faith, and it's just, it's not, if we're not willing to do that, what's that say about us? Are we really living our faith? And that was important for me to go and do that. And it's like, you don't even think about it sometimes. It's like, my wife was like, where are you going? Like, well, I'm gonna go. And she's like, why? Like, no, we need to do this, I can't be out here, hey, promoting JMJ and you gotta live the faith, you gotta, I never did this to sell hats, If I did it to sell hats to be popular, I probably wouldn't have stopped my brand, but at this point right now, I'm taking a break, I'm burned out, but I never did it for that. So it was always for me, for the faith, and the reason I put it on video was, that I wanted to make people aware of what's going on and what might be coming to them, That's the only reason why I put it there. I stayed there while people were praying near the statue, because some people were there praying. And those people there are very important, much more important. Actually, I want to say this. They're just as important as the people that went there to go defend the faith, to go defend the statue, because they stayed there, they put, holy water on it, they started doing the holy water, they're doing their prayers in Latin. That's just as important as defending your faith. And it all comes from this attacks from, you know, this demonic left-wing ideology that keeps attacking our faith, you know. You know, I ended up doing some research on who were the ones that were doing this, and I got pretty deep into this, and I ended up doing this for myself, and I ended up finding out that was a lot of these people are you know, professors, college professors that are organizing these youngsters from college to go do these type of things, and that's ridiculous, you know. It's just how these people, these professors, these people from these universities,
they get paid well.
You know, having these youngsters go tear down a Father Junipero Serra statue, you know, because it's an idea that they don't agree with, you know, and I just never bought into that. You know, they always accuse us the right of living in the past, but in reality, who are the ones living in the past? You know, Father.
Yeah, we're not the ones mad at a statue of a guy from the past.
Right. So that, you know, if they really look into the history of Father Junipero, he came here to evangelize, not to enslave, but because a left-wing ideology teacher tells him that the white man came to, you know, the lands where Indians roamed freely and they enslaved our people, you know, I mean, that's just kind of crazy, you know what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah. So one of the things that stood out to me while you were talking is you said, well, I went down, there was an incident about half hour from my house with the statue of Saint Junipero Serra, and I wanted to go down there because and I wanted other men to go down there because if we don't fight for something that represents our faith, what does it say about our faith? Like, do you think that's why people, you know, not just you, but people are unhappy with the GOP and the Republican Party is they say they believe in, you know, certain things, certain values, you know, they say they're conservative, but when it comes time to and you know, maybe we don't know what it looks like, you know, maybe we don't know what it looks like, but when it comes time to like defend a conservative idea or a conservative value or something conservative, like maybe the Christian faith or maybe the freedom of religion, right? When it comes down to it, they don't do it, right? So they're just saying like, oh yeah, we, you know, we're for these things, but then when they get attacked, you know, we're for small businesses, but then when, you know, the left attacks small businesses, there's nobody there to defend the small businesses, and we're kind of looking at the Republicans like, hey, you said that you're for small businesses, like help us, but they're, you know, kind of just sitting back. Like, do you think that's what's like behind this? That like maybe we don't know what it looks like for the Republicans to fight for, you know, conservative ideas, but like whatever it looks like, they're not doing it.
Yeah, that would be very difficult to say because you would really have to, you know, judge a politician on what he believes. You know, now is his body, soul, and mind attached to what the Republicans believe? You know, that's kind of hard to kind of judge a person. You know, as far as me going now to try and defend the statue, I try to live, breathe, pray Catholic. You know, I don't think there's a day that doesn't go by that doesn't think about my faith. You know, I could have maybe a day or two, or maybe even some type of desolation where I don't even, you know, pray, but you're always thinking faith. You're always gonna think about God. You know, you're always gonna think about your God. And
I think you're right. Yeah, but you're not necessarily always gonna like think about politics, even if you're a politician. Yeah. So yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. So for me, it would be, I think, much harder to go out and let's say they eliminate the Second Amendment. Oh, I'm going to Washington to go and fight for the, you know, that I would put a little bit more time to think in, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes down to my faith, you know, or they will try to eliminate, you know, freedom of religion or whatever, then I would probably be more gung ho about that, you know.
Yeah.
But because I live.
Well, let's talk about that. Like, so, like, if they eliminate the Second Amendment, like, you know,
Yeah,
like, so earlier today, like, when you described the situation with the statue, you said, you know, there was men already there, and I kind of you kind of described them as cristeros. Like, in 1926, when the Mexican government came down on the Mexicans for their Catholic faith, like, the Mexican Catholics fought back with the Mexican Catholics fought back with guns, right? Like, they started a militia, they started an army, and they fought back their own government, you know, for their freedom of religion. So, I mean, right now you said if they got rid of the Second Amendment, I don't know if I'd be gung ho about it, but if the Second Amendment goes, and then, you know, that's kind of where I'm going. Like, let's say tomorrow morning, right? There's a press conference, and we've decided the Second Amendment is out. We're abolishing the Second Amendment with the 28th Amendment or whatever, you know, because they would have to amend the Constitution, right? Like, I don't think we would need to wait a long time. Maybe we would before they're like, we're going to get rid of religion too. And what are you going to do about it? Like, everyone had to turn in their guns, or, you know, the only way that you can get a gun is in the black market now, because it's illegal to have a gun now. Like, we wouldn't have a way to do what the cristeros did. Do you get what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
and maybe that wouldn't happen because, you know, you and I can't tell the future, but if they were to abolish the Second Amendment, like, maybe we would go a year, 2 years, a decade, 2 decades with them not touching freedom of religion. But I doubt it, because yeah, that's true. I mean, whether it's a year or 100 years, maybe it would, you know, especially if the government is the one that has all the guns. Like, if you don't want to do something, like, everyone likes to say, like, I would die for X, you know, especially like Christians. But when it actually happens, you know, we pray that in that situation, you know, please God, give me the grace to, like, die for my faith if I'm ever in the situation. But we don't know, right? Especially if we don't have guns. So, I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, the reason I said that was because government, they could take away the Second Amendment. That could happen, you know, and then after that, persecution. But, you know, think about the sheer number of guns that are out there.
Yeah.
They're not going to come out and get 300 million guns, you know?
Yeah.
That's one thing. So you would have your chance to defend your faith if they were to come after you.
That's a good point, because it's not like the cristeros asked.
They didn't have permission for it. In fact, they were illegal. So what happened with the cristeros was that, you know, Plutarco Calles' law came in, you know, and then little by little, they started putting laws. They started making certain things illegal. You know, they didn't outright outlaw the Catholic religion right away, but it was like little things, you know, like priests can't wear their vestments outside. They can't wear this outside. The Catholic people can't do certain little things until they completely outlawed it. And that took several years, you know? But that's what I'm saying. It's you know, if they were to, like, you know, some politician would get in and say, hey, you know what, we're eliminating the Second Amendment. Yeah, we probably would put up a fight, but nothing to where, like, I'm going to take the next flight to Washington tomorrow. You know? So
if they, again, you know, we're thinking about these things and we're wrestling with them, and, you know, we're struggling with them in real time, you know? So, you know, like, hypothetically speaking, if, like, the Second Amendment were abolished, would there be anything that the states would be able to do? Like, okay, well, fine. Like, you don't want to, like, give people the right, not give, but you don't want to acknowledge in our Constitution anymore that people have the right to bear arms. Well, fine, Texas is gonna write a law that says in Texas you have the right to bear arms. Do you think it like something like that would happen? Because a lot of
that would completely be opening up a can of worms.
Yeah.
That would definitely. I mean, I don't want to say civil war or anything like that, but I mean, look at what we have now. I don't want to start talking about the election, but look what we have now. Where some states are suing other states because of the way they handle their elections. That's an election issue. Imagine the Second Amendment; it'd probably be worse.
Can states sue the federal government? Do you know? Like if like I said, if a press conference tomorrow, as soon as we're done recording this podcast, we go to sleep. We wake up, all of a sudden breaking news. Second Amendment is going away. Blah blah blah. Like can Texas and like the 12 states?
Appeals?
Huh?
Like do appeals and stuff like that?
I guess just do what they did with Texas sued Pennsylvania, Georgia, and a few other states, and like 12 other states with Texas sued them. Like, what if Texas wanted to sue like the federal government? Would they be able to do that? Like,
I'm assuming they probably would.
Yeah, I mean, I had never heard of a state suing another state. I never heard until this happened.
Yeah, so that was kind of unique, and I think that happening was kind of, that was kind of like the first time for me too. So that was kind of interesting to see.
That was that was really interesting.
I mean, I wish I knew more about politics in that sense, but we're seeing many things that a lot of us are seeing for the first time, and we're learning as we're going.
Yeah.
I'm not a political pundit. I'm just a regular dude that's just working and raising my family and practicing my faith.
I mean, that's like the majority of like people, like you're in California and you just you're observing everything around you and you're like, I'm just trying to raise my family, and like unfortunately like politics affects that. You know what I mean? Like I'm in, or at least it feels like it affects it. I mean, I don't like to go off of feeling, but you intuit like, oh, that this is not going to be good for my family. Like I'm all the way in the Midwest and I feel like the same thing, like I'm just a regular guy. I'm not a political pundit. I got married because I thought that's what's God's will for me. I have a baby because I think that's what's God's will for me. And I'm just trying to do that. And then I got all this other stuff going on, and I gotta and it's almost like I'm reacting to it because I'm trying to protect what I got going on,
Right.
And I don't know how, you know what I mean? But the reason that I brought up the Second Amendment and like if it could go to the states, because like a lot of people don't know that like if Roe v. Wade were overturned, it would just go to the states.
Yeah.
Like people think it's a switch. Like people think like, oh, we can't touch Roe v. Wade because Roe v. Wade made it legal. If we touch it, then it's going to make it illegal. But that's not true. What would happen is it would just go to the states,
and each state would
decide. So that's kind of what I was thinking. Like, well, if they get rid of the Second Amendment, maybe each state will decide what they want to do with guns.
Right.
But I don't know.
It's written in the Constitution. We should be able to. Obviously, I live in a state and county and city that's very strict. There's guns out there in the Midwest where you live that you could buy that we can't out here. We're very limited out here in California. Probably one of the most limited states as far as gun purchases and ammunition goes. It's like if I go buy I want to buy a box of 50 9mm rounds, I gotta take my birth certificate, I gotta show my proof of my a bill, like a water bill, 2 forms of ID. I'm like, wow, it's like crazy. Like, dude, I just want to go to the range, and right. I'm telling you, and I'm doing this I'll keep it at that. As a peace officer, I have to do that, somebody that has to practice because it's part of my career. I have to go and present my birth certificate unless I change my ID and get rid of the federal limits applying. That's another conversation. But I got to show all this proof to go buy, some ammunition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're saying that you got some of the strictest gun laws, but in your opinion, like, does that reduce the gun violence? Like that you could, you know what I mean? Like, let's say they didn't have all these gun laws, right? And then one day they're like, all right, we wrote these 10 gun laws or 20 gun laws. Like, do you think it would be any different? Like, oh yeah, I can see that the gun violence is going down, or it would really be indiscernible?
I mean, look at Texas and California. I mean, it's pretty comparable as far as like the gun violence. I mean, just last year, November, 3 blocks from my house, had that kid that shot up the kids at the high school, at Saugus High School. That was 3 blocks from my house. He shot up a couple of kids and had that shooting here. I mean, it happens. What in Tech? No. We had up north in California. We had that concert where some guy just went in through the back, jumped the gate and just started shooting people. I mean, it happens here, and we have some of the strictest laws.
Gun laws.
If you go to a place to like Utah or somewhere, it rarely happens, and they probably have the most lenient gun laws there. So yeah, it's not about the laws. I guess it comes down to education and the mentality of the people.
So I think you mentioned 2 people earlier, and I think maybe we'll finish with 2 like questions about maybe just one, right? So like earlier you were talking about like before you had a reversion to the faith, that you were a liberal Democrat, but because of some work experience, it got the wheels spinning. You started thinking, even though that happened, you still kind of voted for Obama. And then when you had your conversion, you're like, okay, like it's about Christ. And because it's about Christ, like there are certain things that I want to conserve. So, now I'm conservative politically, right? Why do you think so many people, just as a person that has kind of, lived both, right? And has had this journey, and, as a Hispanic, and as a Mexican, because we know we're fortunate enough, we're blessed enough to know our history. I wasn't born in Mexico. I don't know if you were, but I was blessed to be able to know about Saint Jose Sanchez del Rio and the Cristero War, and Blessed Miguel Pro. And not a lot of Mexicans know that. Even Mexicans that were born in Mexico and come over at a young age, they. I've talked to people and they're like, what? Like that happened? Like you mentioned AOC earlier, right? Like, in my opinion, it seems like a lot of young, because she's Hispanic, I think she's Puerto Rican maybe. And they call her AOC and she's young. And I think a lot of young Hispanics and a lot of young Mexicans, unfortunately, they're like attracted to her ideas, and people like you and I who have been, blessed and fortunate enough to know that those ideas, don't work, or maybe it's not that they don't work, but they go against what we believe in. They go against our Christian values. Like, why do you think that is? Like, what do you think it is about her, or about her ideas? Or maybe just like, what is it that attracts, like, and especially you work with the youth. So, what do you think it is that the youth kind of gravitate towards her?
Because I did work as a, with juveniles, actually as in after school programs with the kids. And then going into the welfare office pretty much, I see a lot of focus on the minority communities, where they kind of want to, I don't want to say they want to keep them there. It's kind of like, it kind of feels like they want to keep them at a certain level financially.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say they, because it just sounds like the systemic talk that's systems against it. I don't want to get into that type of stuff because it's just generalizing. But
Mm-hmm.
it just feels that the education system combined with politics is just formed so that, you know, where it makes it harder for a person to get out of that type of thinking,
Mm-hmm.
where, you know what, I need to work hard for what I want.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of the school system, because I work in the school system, especially in the minority, the urban areas, are set up financially and everything so that, because I remember when I was younger, I was a kid here, they wanted to force to keep me in ESL classes, you know. And then later on, I found out working through the school system, like, hey, they want to keep me in ESL Spanish classes because that's where the money's coming in, you know.
Again, for the wrong reasons.
For the
Just
wrong
like
reasons.
when you were when you had your job and they just wanted to give people money so they can get a bigger budget.
Exactly. So
Okay, continue.
so you have these issues, and so it makes people dependent on governments, you know. And then on top of that, you have the colleges and the universities, these instructors that are showing, that are teaching our kids, our youngsters, to, you know, they're giving them that, teaching them that liberal ideology, and it just attracts these people. It just, you know, it doesn't, teachers are not, they're not, what do you call it? They're partisan, man. It's just that the left ideology is taking control of our schools. You know, if you go to the teachers union here in LA, most teachers are very left wing. You know, I mean, the head of the university there is very left wing. You know, BLM type stuff. You know, and it's like, these are the people that are teaching your kids. You know, it's not set up so people could think independently anymore. You know, it's like, just like, you know, our news sources, the majority of them are, you know, left-wing think tank. You know, they're not giving you news, they're giving you opinions and ideas. You know, you click on to CNN and they're telling you everything about, you know, what Trump did wrong instead of stating facts. You know, and that goes for Fox News as well, or other conservative media. You know, I don't want to bash, you know, other news sources, but like One America and all them, you know, they tend to just, you know, it's all right-wing ideas that they're throwing at you, just like the left wing. So it's not set up so people could think independently anymore. You know, it's not, you don't have like some guy coming here and telling you and giving you the facts about what happened in politics. You know, it's more like, hey, this is what Trump did wrong again, you know, or this is what AOC is doing, or this is what Pelosi is doing, you know, and it's just bashing from both sides, and people pick a side.
Yeah.
People pick a side. Obviously, the majority are left wing here in California, at least, and people are not taught to think independently anymore, and that's what's happening in our school system as well, and that's why a lot of people are attracted to it. People are not taught to work hard for what they want to be. You know, my parents, for example, came here illegally. Okay, they started working hard. You know, they ended up becoming residents. They bought a house. They eventually became citizens at an older age, mind you, but they became citizens. And from that, I noticed that from my parents, they never went and asked for food stamps. That's one thing. They never became dependent on the government. But because of those values, that taught me, hey, I got to work hard for what I want, you know. And now I'm trying to project that towards my kids now, you know. But of course, I don't send my kids to my kids are homeschooled, and you know, they're Catholic homeschooled.
All right, well, so if I'm understanding you correctly, that you think that there's a lack of independent think because unfortunately, the education system is just presenting ideas, and they're presenting ideas, but they're kind of saying, oh, this idea is right and this idea is wrong, instead of saying, here's this idea and here's this idea. What do you think? Do you think it's right or wrong? And so because they're just presenting certain ideas, and maybe they're similar to AOC's, they hear these ideas and then they say, oh, well, she's got the right one. Her ideas are good, as opposed to conservative ideas are bad. So this was about, obviously, faith, and about the maybe the need for Republicans to actually step up, for their conservative constituents, their conservative voters, and or if they're not going to do it, then maybe it's time for a new conservative party that, whether you call it the Common Sense Party or the New Conservative Party or the Patriot Party, but just a new party that is for term limits, it's for upholding freedom of religion and Christian values and the Second Amendment, and actually wanting to fight for those things. So what are your final thoughts on that? If you could talk to one of these politicians that maybe are career politicians, a career Republican who's been in office 30, 40, 50 years, and he was willing to hear you out, and you were willing to express your concerns and your unhappiness, what would you say? Or what would you say to the guy that wants to start the New Conservative Party, that wants to start the Common Sense Party? What are your final thoughts on that?
Well, not to lose focus with their faith. First of all, I would want to know if that person is a practicing person of faith, because I think a lot of the values and morals come from that. Because if they don't have Jesus, if they don't have that, if they don't have their religion, politics will become their religion. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So and a lot of times with those politics comes corruption. So if I know that person is living their faith honestly and strongly, then I would back them up 100%. If I knew that was a practicing person, and I would want to definitely have that conversation with that person. Now, if I were to know that person was just pretty much just a politician, I would think, hey, this guy's gonna listen to me 3%. The other stuff he's gonna be like, yeah, whatever. Because that's my experience dealing with that. I've dealt with politicians like that. Me being the lower person on the totem pole, pretty much working for government, or the school district, when I was younger, and I would have these politicians coming into the school where I was working at, and they were trying to push this whole after school program thing. We would have these politicians come in and, act like, they're listening to you, but in reality, they're kind of not. They just want to look good. So I have that perspective already, maybe because I'm in California, I don't know, but but like I said, if I were to have a one-on-one with a person that wants to start a new party or wants to become a politician, I would want to know where they're at as far as their faith goes, and go from there.
I think that's a good answer. So you would want to figure out whether they have their faith, because I think that's a good insight, that if they don't have their faith, well, then politicians is gonna become their faith, and then we're just gonna end up where we are right now, right? And then so
yeah, I mean, just for example, if you were like to go talk to, I don't know, some politician that claims they're Catholic, a Pelosi or a Biden, they claim they're very faithful Catholic, but they're out here voting for, abortion things, it's like, well, how Catholic are you? You know what I'm saying? So that's why if I were to have that one-on-one with that one person, that's my first part of the conversation would be, okay, where are you at in your faith? You know? So
Sergio, thank you so much for your time, bro. I really appreciate it. You know, God bless you with your career, with your time off. I'm excited to see you come back whenever you are feeling that you can continue this work and that you're not burnt out. Again, these are things that I'm interested in, and I'm glad we found each other and we were able to set, you know, thank God we were able to set time apart and, you know, talk about these things and in real time and wrestle with them in real time. You know, we don't have the answers, but we're just sharing, you know, what we think. And I really appreciate that. So if somebody watches this and they like what you have to say, you know, how can they connect with you?
Well, they could connect with me on my Instagram at JMJCat3. Pretty much it stands for Jesus, Mary, Joseph, Catholic, 3 for the Holy Trinity. So JMJCat3. I'm pretty active on Instagram.
The polls have been fire lately.
Yeah, have they?
Yeah, I like them. You know, like my wife actually mentioned them to me too, and some of them I can't vote because I can't pick. But some of them are funny, and then some of them, like the Cardinal Sarah, Cardinal Burke, I was like, nah, I can't pick. I like me personally, I like both of them.
Oh yeah, I think I love both of those guys.
The pizza and the Hawaiian one was funny. And some of the church ones were like, some of them for me were easy, like communion on the tongue or communion on the hand. I was like, communion on the tongue. And there was just some other ones. Oh, I think it was like Novus Ordo traditional Latin Mass. Like I was like, yeah, these are good. And I had no idea you were going to be doing them like for a few days. So that's been kind of cool.
It's just something that I just thought of real quick, and I just started doing it and just having fun. It's like, okay, you know what? You know, us Catholics are not in church like 24/7. You know, we're regular people. We love pizza, we love beer, we love whiskey. You know, we enjoy time at the park. We love baseball games. We're just, you know, it's part of our life. We're normal people, and you know, like I said, media makes it seem like we're some social right-wing extremists. And we're just regular people. And that's true. That's what I'm just trying to show, you know. So
So check out. I mean, if you want to connect with Sergio, JMJCat3 is his Instagram, and maybe if you find his profile, he'll still be doing these polls on his stories. So yeah, man, thank you so much. I'll be talking to you soon, bro.
All right. No, thank you very much for inviting me, man.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. God bless you.
God bless you too, bro.
And God bless everybody.